She handed him a data crystal containing everything the medical team had discovered, proof of systematic biological experimentation on refugee populations by hegemony scientists. "This is why they attacked us," she explained, her voice shaking. "We were treating unusual symptoms in the refugees. When we realized what was happening, we collected tissue samples, recorded testimonies, everything." Ryu examined the crystal, his face hardening as he understood the full extent of the hegemony's crimes. "Rest now, doctor," he said gently. "You've done your duty. We'll take it from here." On the bridge of his flagship, the Sentinel, Ryu called together his command staff. The captured hegemony vessels were being secured, their crews detained but treated humanely. The attack was ordered directly from the hegemony capital, reported intelligence officer Hyunjin after analyzing the captured communication logs. "By Emperor Thex himself." Ryu nodded grimly. "Then we know where we're going next. Prepare the fleet for departure to the hegemony capital world." "Admiral," asked his second-in-command hesitantly, "are we declaring war?" "No," Ryu replied, looking at the data crystal in his hand. "We're delivering justice. Something we should have done 300 years ago." In the interrogation chamber aboard the Sentinel, Overlord Cross sat with his wrists bound by energy restraints. Despite his predicament, he maintained an air of superiority as Admiral Ryu entered the room. "Your little victory means nothing," Cross said with a sneer. "The hegemony controls thousands of worlds. This fleet of yours will be crushed when our main armada arrives." Ryu pulled up a chair and sat across from the prisoner. "I'm not interested in your threats. I want to know why a medical ship was attacked without warning." "They saw things they shouldn't have," Cross replied. "Simple as that." "Who gave the order?" Cross straightened proudly. "Emperor Thex himself. The medical ship had evidence that could destabilize our research programs. The Emperor doesn't tolerate interference." Ryu studied the hegemony officer's face. "You seem proud of attacking unarmed healers." "Proud to serve the Empire," Cross corrected. "Something you humans wouldn't understand. You've spent centuries hiding in your little corner of the galaxy, playing at peace." A knock interrupted them. Intelligence officer Hyunjin entered, her face pale with urgency. "Admiral, you need to see this immediately," she said, handing him a data tablet. Ryu scanned the information, his expression changing subtly as he processed what he was seeing. "Where did you find this?" he asked quietly. "In the hegemony flagship's restricted archives," Hyunjin explained. "It was triple encrypted. It dates back over 300 years. Ryu stood abruptly and left the interrogation room. He walked quickly to the command deck, where his senior officers gathered around the main display. The screen showed ancient records that had been hidden in the hegemony databases, historical documents that told a very different story than what most galactic species knew. "Is this verified?" Ryu asked. "Yes, Admiral," confirmed Hyunjin. "We cross-referenced with our own historical records. It's genuine." The documents revealed a startling truth: humans had once been the peacekeepers of the galaxy. For millennia, Earth had maintained a force called the Guardian Fleet that protected developing civilizations and maintained order among the older species. A devastating war 3 centuries ago had forced humans into isolation to recover their strength and rebuild their fleets. During that isolation, the hegemony had risen to power, rewriting history and presenting themselves as the natural rulers of the galaxy. "There's more," said Hyunjin, bringing up additional files. "The hegemony has been conducting illegal genetic experiments on developing species. They're trying to create specialized slave races, beings designed specifically for labor, war, or resource extraction." The medical evidence collected by the HMSS Mercy now made perfect sense. The doctors had unwittingly discovered the hegemony's greatest secret. "They're following the same path that led to the last galactic war," Ryu said quietly. "The one that nearly destroyed us all." On the bridge view screen, a map displayed the current positions of Earth's reactivated fleets. Similar awakening processes had occurred throughout human territory, with ancient ships emerging from hidden bases across the solar system. We have 28 battle groups fully operational, reported Fleet Commander Daehun. All reporting ready status. Ryu turned to his communications officer. Contact the Council. They need to see this evidence. Back on Earth, the Defense Council viewed the revelations with grim faces. The records confirmed what only a few historians had known, the true reason for humanity's self-imposed isolation. 300 years ago, explained Admiral Lee to the younger council members, we nearly destroyed ourselves protecting the galaxy from forces that sought to enslave developing species. Our ancestors decided that we needed time to recover, to rebuild our strength. They created the facade of a simple, peaceful species while maintaining our military technology in secret. And now, asked Counselor Sumi. Now we face the same choice they did, Lee replied. Hide again and allow these atrocities to continue, or reclaim our role as guardians. The vote was unanimous. On the Sentinel, Admiral Ryu received the Council's decision with solemn acceptance. He addressed his crew over the ship-wide communication system. For generations, we've hidden our strength, presented ourselves as simple healers and traders. Today, we reclaim our heritage. Our ancestors were not just explorers or doctors, they were guardians of peace. They stood against those who would enslave others or exploit developing worlds. He paused, looking at the star map showing their next destination. We're setting course for the hegemony capital. Not for revenge, but because 300 years ago, we abandoned our duty to protect. We won't make that mistake again. As the fleet prepared to depart, other ships began appearing on their sensors, vessels from a dozen different species, approaching cautiously but with obvious purpose. They're hailing us, Admiral, reported the communications officer. Put them through, ordered Ryu. The face of an Altari captain appeared on screen. We've monitored your actions against the hegemony forces. The stories were true, weren't they? The Guardians have returned. The human fleet materialized above Hegemony Prime, a gleaming planet covered in sprawling cities that served as the capital of the Empire. Admiral Ryu expected immediate resistance, perhaps the full might of the Hegemony Armada rising to meet them. Instead, an unusual sight greeted the Earth vessels. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species formed a loose gathering around the planet. They made no aggressive moves toward the human fleet. They're not attacking, reported Tactical Officer Mina, now recovered from her injuries aboard the HMSS Mercy. They're waiting. Ryu studied the assembled vessels. He recognized Altari cruisers, Novan trading ships repurposed with weapon systems, and even the organic vessels of the reclusive Talon. We're receiving transmission requests from 23 different ships, said Communications Officer Sunho. They all want to speak with the commander of the human fleet. Ryu nodded. Prepare the main conference room. Invite representatives from each major species. Within an hour, the Sentinel's conference room filled with delegates from across the galaxy. Some appeared nervous, others hopeful. All stared at the humans with intense curiosity. An elder Altari stepped forward first. His blue skin wrinkled with age, eyes milky with cataracts, but his voice remained strong. We remember the Guardians, he said, using the ancient name for humans. When your ships appeared in Sector 7 and defeated the hegemony forces, we dared to hope the old stories were true. What old stories? Asked Ryu. That humans were once protectors of the galaxy, replied a Novan delegate. That before the hegemony rose to power, Earth's fleet stood against tyrants and ensured peace among the stars. We've been monitoring the hegemony's abuses for generations, added a Talon representative, her translucent skin pulsing with bioluminescence. But we lacked the strength to oppose them. On the planet below, chaos spread through the hegemony capital. The evidence recovered from the HMSS Mercy played on every communication channel, the horrific experiments, official authorizations bearing the Emperor's seal, and testimony from victims. Hegemony citizens watched in shock as the truth about their government was revealed. In his palace, Emperor Thex raged as his guards abandoned their posts. Stop the transmissions. Arrest anyone spreading these lies. But his orders went unheeded. One by one, member worlds across the Empire declared independence. Hegemony military vessels surrendered rather than defend the regime. Admiral Ryu led a delegation to the surface, accompanied by representatives from a dozen species. They walked unopposed through the ornate halls of the Imperial Palace, past empty guard stations and through doors left ajar. They found Emperor Thex in his throne room, alone except for his most loyal advisors. The once powerful ruler seemed diminished, his elaborate robes hanging loosely on his frame. "You've destroyed everything," Thex spat at the approaching humans. "Centuries of order and prosperity, ruined by your interference." "Prosperity built on suffering," corrected Dr. Gion, who had insisted on joining the delegation. She carried with her the evidence collected by her fallen colleagues. "Built on illegal experiments and exploitation of helpless refugees." "They were necessary sacrifices," Thex insisted. "The advancement of superior species requires such measures." "That's the same justification used by those who started the last Great War," said Ryu. "The war that nearly destroyed all advanced life in this galaxy." 2 days later, representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered in the former Hegemony Grand Assembly. Admiral Ryu stood before them, no longer in battle uniform but dressed in the formal blue attire of Earth's diplomatic corps. 300 years ago, humanity retreated to heal from wounds inflicted in the last Great War, he told the assembled delegates. "We hid our technology and our history, becoming simple healers and traders. But we never intended to abandon our responsibility permanently." He gestured toward the stars visible through the vast chamber windows. "Today, we reclaim our place not as conquerors, but as guardians. The Earth Defense Fleet will be recommissioned as the Galactic Protection Force, with representatives from all willing species." One by one, delegates stepped forward to join the new alliance. Even former hegemony worlds, now free of Imperial control, pledged their support. 1 month later, on a peaceful hillside on Earth, survivors of the HMSS Mercy gathered alongside military personnel and delegates from 100 worlds. A monument of gleaming crystal rose toward the sky, bearing the names of those lost in the attack. Captain Jaiwo Park's final message played one last time: "We are clearly marked as a medical vessel." They knew what we were. As the sun set over the memorial, Admiral Ryu stood with Dr. Gion, watching the first stars appear in the evening sky. "Was it worth it?" she asked quietly. "The return from hiding?" Ryu nodded slowly. "Your ship was named Mercy for a reason. Sometimes the greatest mercy is ensuring justice prevails." Above them, newly commissioned ships of the Galactic Protection Force moved into orbit, their crews composed of humans working alongside members of every species in the Alliance, guardians once more of a fragile peace. The HMSS Mercy floated peacefully against the backdrop of distant stars. Its white hull gleamed with blue stripes, marking it clearly as a medical vessel. Inside the bridge, Captain Jaiwo Park reviewed the latest reports from the refugee camps they had visited. "Nearly 5,000 patients treated," she said with satisfaction. "Good work, everyone." The medical ship had spent 3 weeks providing care to refugees displaced by natural disasters on the outer colonies. Most of the crew looked forward to returning home, their mission complete. Heun, the communications officer, looked up from her console with concern. "Captain, 3 vessels approaching at high speed." "Identification?" Park asked, setting down her tablet. "Hegemony warships," Heun replied, her voice tightening. "Destroyer class." Captain Park frowned. The Galactic Hegemony controlled much of this sector, but the HMSS Mercy had all proper clearances to operate in neutral space. She straightened her white uniform. "Open a channel," she ordered. "Perhaps they need medical assistance." Heun tried repeatedly but shook her head. "No response, Captain." Tactical Officer Mina glanced nervously at her screens. "They're moving into attack formation." "That's impossible," Park said. "We're clearly marked as a medical vessel. Broadcast our identification on all frequencies." The massive ships drew closer, their angular shapes blocking out the stars behind them. The lead destroyer suddenly flashed as weapon ports opened along its hull. "They're targeting us!" Mina shouted. Captain Park grabbed the ship-wide communication system. "All personnel, brace for The first blast struck before she could finish. The bridge shook violently as alarms blared throughout the ship. Emergency lights flashed red as smoke began to fill the air. "Direct hit to our medical bay," reported Donghyun from damage control. "We have casualties." Park couldn't understand it. Medical ships were protected under all galactic treaties. Even pirates respected the universal symbol that covered their hull. "Return fire," demanded a young officer in panic. "We have no weapons," Park reminded him calmly. "This is a medical vessel." Another blast rocked the ship, more powerful than the first. Sparks showered from overhead panels as crew members were thrown from their stations. Through the observation window, Park could see the hegemony ships methodically circling the Mercy like predators. "They're jamming our distress signal," Haeun reported, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. "I can't get through to Earth Command." Captain Park helped a fallen officer back to her feet. "Keep trying. Use the emergency quantum channel." The next hit cracked the bridge window. Warning klaxons indicated hull breaches on 3 decks. Park knew the Mercy couldn't withstand much more. "Captain," called Dr. Jiyeon from the medical deck, her voice breaking over the damaged comm system. "We need to evacuate the patients. We're losing pressure in the main ward." Park nodded grimly. "Begin evacuation procedures. Get everyone to the escape pods." As her crew rushed to save as many as possible, Park accessed the emergency transmitter, a direct line to Earth that used ancient technology the hegemony couldn't easily block. She took a deep breath and activated the recorder. "This is HMSS Mercy to Earth Command. We are under unprovoked attack by hegemony forces. We are clearly marked as a medical vessel. They knew what we were. This is deliberate." She quickly attached their coordinates and sensor readings showing the attacking ships. The bridge shuddered as another explosion tore through the lower decks. The lights flickered and died, leaving only emergency illumination. "Message sent," Haeun confirmed weakly. Outside, the hegemony ships closed in for the kill. Their final barrage tore through the Mercy's central section, breaking the vessel nearly in half. Escape pods launched desperately in all directions, though many were targeted by hegemony weapons as they fled. Across the galaxy, the message from HMSS Mercy reached Earth. In a monitoring station beneath the Pacific Ocean, an operator stared in disbelief at the incoming transmission. Within minutes, the recording was forwarded to the highest levels of Earth's government. Deep underground, in chambers unused for centuries, lights began to activate. Ancient systems hummed to life as the message played for grim-faced officials. "Protocol confirmation required," stated an automated system. Admiral Juno Lee, Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces, placed his palm on the scanner. His voice was steady as he spoke the words that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. "Protocol Lazarus. Authorization Lee Alpha 79. Wake them up." Throughout Earth's solar system, hidden facilities began powering up after centuries of dormancy. What the hegemony had just done would not go unanswered. Deep beneath Mount Cheyenne, 12 men and women sat around a black stone table. The Earth Defense Council had not gathered in this chamber for over 300 years. The air felt heavy with dust and history. Admiral Juno Lee stood at the head of the table, his weathered face grim in the blue light from the monitors. The attack on the HMSS Mercy played on repeat on the largest screen, a medical ship being deliberately destroyed by hegemony forces. "Survivors?" asked Counselor Sumi, her voice barely above a whisper. 17, replied Lee. Most from escape pods that launched before the final attack. The hegemony destroyed many of the pods as well. The room fell silent. For centuries, humans had presented themselves to the galaxy as peaceful explorers and healers. They had hidden their true capabilities, maintained the illusion of technological simplicity, and focused on diplomacy rather than military power. That peaceful mask had just cost 233 lives. "They targeted the ship because of what it found," said Intelligence Director Miho. He placed a data crystal on the table. One of the survivors managed to save this. The Mercy discovered evidence of hegemony biological experiments on refugee populations. Counselor Jinho, the oldest member present, shook his head sadly. This is what we feared when we went into hiding. Power without accountability. Admiral Lee nodded. The time for hiding has passed. I propose activation of Protocol Lazarus. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Protocol Lazarus, the awakening of Earth's true military might, dormant for centuries. The resurrection of forces that had once made humans the most feared species in the galaxy. All in favor? Asked Sumi. Every hand around the table rose without hesitation. Within minutes, the activation codes spread across Earth's defense network. In the frozen wastes of Antarctica, beneath the Mariana Trench, inside hollow mountains, and in orbiting stations disguised as asteroids, ancient systems awakened. At Revival Station Omega beneath the Antarctic ice, Admiral Taehyun Ryu stood before massive doors that had not opened in 3 centuries. Frost covered his uniform as cold air rushed past him. The medical officer beside him held a neural injector. Are you prepared, Admiral? She asked. Ryu nodded, although truthfully, no one could be fully prepared for what was about to happen. He had been trained for this moment his entire life, but training and reality were vastly different things. The needle pressed against his temple with a soft hiss. Immediately, his vision blurred as foreign memories flooded his mind, the genetic memories of his ancestors who had commanded fleets in the last Great War. Knowledge of weapons, tactics, and enemies passed down through carefully preserved DNA sequences suddenly became his own. He gasped, steadying himself against the wall as 3 centuries of military knowledge integrated with his consciousness. He remembered ships he had never commanded and battles he had never fought. He remembered why humanity had hidden its true nature from the galaxy. And he remembered how to fight. The ancestral memories have integrated successfully, reported the medical officer, checking her scanner. Neural pathways stable. Ryu straightened his back and faced the massive doors. Open them. The ancient mechanisms groaned as the doors slowly parted, revealing a cavernous hangar shrouded in darkness. As lights flickered on one by one, Ryu's breath caught in his throat. There they stood, row upon row of warships, their black hulls absorbing the light rather than reflecting it. These weren't the simple transport vessels that humans publicly used for trade. These were the legendary Shadow Fleet, the most advanced warships ever created. Similar scenes played out across Earth and throughout the solar system. On Mars, massive hangar doors disguised as natural formations slid open, disturbing the red dust that had covered them for centuries. Beneath Europa's ice, powered by the heat of distant fusion reactors, shipyards began final preparations on vessels that had been maintained in perfect readiness by automated systems. In orbit around Jupiter, disguised as an unremarkable moon, the command carrier Atlas awakened. Its quantum computers refreshed with data accumulated over 300 years of silent observation. Admiral Ryu walked among the ships, his newly acquired memories helping him recognize each class. Destroyers, cruisers, and at the far end of the hangar, the massive dreadnought that would serve as his flagship, the Sentinel. Begin crew revival procedures, he ordered. Priority to tactical and engineering personnel. Throughout the facility, stasis pods hummed as they prepared to wake their occupants, specially trained officers and crew who had volunteered for centuries-long sleep, ready to defend Earth when needed. As Ryu placed his palm on the Sentinel's hull, he felt a connection to the past and a terrible responsibility for the future. The galaxy would soon remember why humans had once been both respected and feared. Prepare for departure in 6 hours, he commanded. The hegemony will answer for what they've done. Overlord Kraz stood proudly on the bridge of his flagship, watching the recording of the human medical ship breaking apart. The destruction of the HMSS Mercy had been a necessary action. The doctors aboard had seen too much at the refugee camp evidence of hegemony experiments that could never become public. Send word to the Emperor, Kraz ordered his communications officer. The threat has been eliminated. The hegemony fleet had remained in the sector to ensure no escape pods survived. 3 sleek destroyers patrolled the debris field, their weapons still hot from the attack. Overlord, called the sensor officer suddenly, his voice rising with confusion. We're detecting spatial distortions forming at coordinates 739. Kraz frowned. What kind of distortions? Before the officer could answer, the space before them tore open. It wasn't a conventional jump exit, it looked more like reality itself was being peeled back. Through the tear emerged a ship unlike any in hegemony records, angular, midnight black, with no visible weapon ports or engine emissions. Then another tier opened. And another. Within moments, 7 massive vessels surrounded the hegemony fleet. "Unknown vessels, identify yourselves," demanded Kraz, hiding his growing concern behind bravado. "You have entered restricted hegemony space." The main viewscreen activated without any input from his communications team. A human in a dark uniform appeared, his face calm but ice cold as space itself. "This is Admiral Taehyun Ryu of the Earth Defense Fleet," said the man. "You have attacked and destroyed a clearly marked medical vessel in violation of all galactic conventions. Surrender immediately." Laughter burst from Kraz's mouth before he could stop it. "Earth Defense Fleet? Humans don't have warships. Your species builds medical ships and trading vessels. This bluff is..." His words died in his throat as one of the human vessels simply moved. There was no visible propulsion, no warning. One moment it was at the edge of their sensor range, the next it was alongside his flagship. Proximity alarms blared across the bridge. "How did they?" began his tactical officer. Every system on Kraz's ship suddenly went dead. Weapons, shields, engines, and even life support fell silent. Emergency lighting cast an eerie red glow across the shocked faces of his crew. "This is not a negotiation," Admiral Ryu's voice continued through the only working system, communications. "While we speak, similar fleets are neutralizing your forces at 27 other locations. Your crew will be spared if you stand down." On the secondary vessels of Kraz's fleet, panic spread as the black ships approached. One hegemony destroyer attempted to fire, its energy beams seemingly absorbed by the human vessel's hull without effect. The response was immediate, the destroyer's engines detonated, crippling the ship but leaving the crew sections intact. Within 15 minutes, the entire hegemony border fleet had been neutralized without a single human vessel firing a conventional weapon. Admiral Ryu transported aboard Kraz's flagship with a team of officers. The hegemony crew stared in shock at the humans walking calmly through their corridors, wearing uniforms from a military they didn't know existed. "Secure the command deck and all weapon systems," Ryu ordered his team. "Then begin search and rescue operations for any survivors from the Mercy." In the debris field where the medical ship had been destroyed, human rescue craft deployed advanced scanning technology. Against all odds, they found an intact section of hull with survivors trapped inside. Dr. Ji-yeon was among those rescued. Despite her injuries, she clutched a medical case tightly to her chest, refusing to let it go even as she was transferred to a human medical bay. "Admiral," she called weakly when she saw Ryu. "I saved it. The evidence."